USCHO.com.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. Visit ncaa.com/mfrozen4 to get your tickets today. We always like talking to coaches when they've reached a milestone, and today is one of those.
And joining us now on USCHO Spotlight is the head coach of the Air Force Falcons. That is Frank Serratore. Frank, congratulations. Win number 500 last weekend. It's been an interesting season. We'll get to that, but just congratulations right out of the gate on 500. What does it feel like to have reached that milestone?
You know what? It's I'm glad it's in the rearview mirror. It's kind of not that it's been a major distraction, but it's gotten to be, this isn't about me. I never scored one goal. I never had one assist. I never had one save. I've been around a long time, and if you're around long enough, the numbers just happen. But I'm glad it's in the rearview mirror. I can tell you, not because it was number 500, but the game itself against West Point, we had a 5-0 lead, and they came roaring back and almost pulled a miraculous come from behind a win. And I hope 500 was worth it that night, because that 500th win took 5 years off my life. I can tell you that. Yeah.
A 7-6 victory against your rival Army West Point. I wanted to just kind of looking at your season. You played a pretty tough non-conference slate and picked off a couple of good games in there, but you had a bit of a roller coaster ride that first half. But since January 1, your team 5-1 in all Atlantic hockey play. You're now sitting there in third place points wise, but percentage wise, right up there and gearing up for possibly a great run here toward the end of the Atlantic hockey season. What has this season felt like for you as a coach?
Well, first of all, we have a good Air Force team. I know I've been here long enough. I know it when I see it. And we have a good Air Force team. And people were asking me through the first half, because we were winning one, losing one, winning one, losing one. And they go, well, what do you think? I go, I think we have a pretty good team. I know we have a pretty good Air Force team. The problem isn't us. The problem is everybody else. College hockey right now is so deep from top to bottom. And this fifth year COVID year times 4 years has saturated the market with old and experienced players. And nobody's on a down cycle because they're using the transfer portal to fill in layers. And like I said, we've got a good team, but college hockey, it wasn't showing on our record, because college hockey is better than it's ever been from top to bottom. Hey, I mean, everybody's got 4 lines. Everybody's got 6 pretty mobile defensemen, and everybody has a good goalie. Jimmy, you're seeing the goalies move around in college hockey like the quarterbacks are in college football. If you're a good goalie and you're behind somebody else, you're finding a school that needs a goalie. So and then there's only 64 schools. There are more players that can play at this level than there are lockers available. And I don't mean players that difference makers that can make a big difference, but players that can play. There's more players than there are lockers available, scholarships available. So college hockey's better than, from top to bottom. It's never been better than it is right now. We're producing over a third of the players for the NHL, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
You just mentioned a couple of things that kind of trigger something in my head. In the military academies, very special situations when you really think about them. We look at the transfer portal. You can't take transfers. We look at grad transfers. You can't have graduate students just come into your program. These 50-year COVIDs, they haven't positively affected you. If anything, players transfer out of military academies. I understand, we are good friends with Brian Riley, and that's a place where there's a family history and a reason to coach. You have stayed at Air Force since 1997. That is a longevity. Not a lot of coaches have in Division I programs in general, but you've been up against it. and the longer you've gone, the more you're up against it with the changes in the NCAA hockey. What has it been like to be able to stay at a program like Air Force for this long? And how much, maybe just pride do you have in yourself for being able to, stick around and watch great athletes become great men?
Well, first of all, there was a couple things that brought me here. I love Colorado. I coached at Denver before I coached here, and we loved it up there. When this job came available and they asked me to interview, I came down because we loved Colorado. And then I came down and I interviewed, and I went around. And to be honest with you, I didn't think I was going to take the job, even if it was offered to me. I didn't think it would be for me. I thought I'd see a bunch of grim-faced kids goose stepping around. And when I got here, it wasn't that way at all. These are just regular kids that are overachievers, good students, good athletes, good citizens, and the Air Force Academy was their best opportunity to get an Ivy League type education on a full scholarship to play Division I athletics, and then I started coaching here, and hey, do I wish I had a couple more handy goal scorers or maybe a little bit better goalie every once in a while? Yes, but for the most part, it's awful nice to come to work every day when the best part of your player's day is coming down to get yelled at by Uncle Frank, and it's been a joy. The academy fits me; it fits my personality, and the players. I'm an equal opportunity employer. All of our guys are on the same scholarship. I haven't had to make any deals with the devil to get any players here. And, it's kind of nice in that regard, not having to deal with some of the things that I had to deal with as a head coach at Denver and an assistant coach at North Dakota.
Frank, when Bob DiGregorio was getting ready to retire, one of the things he said to me is one of the pivotal moments in the history of Atlantic hockey was when Air Force and RIT joined at the same time. And he said those two schools brought the level of the league up and made it possible for Atlantic hockey to get to where it is today. I mean, do you see it that way? And do you see a league that has just made tremendous strides since you've been part of it?
Well, I do. And Bob, very patriotic guy, and a good man, and has a great deal of respect and high regard for both Army and Air Force. But keep in mind, Atlantic hockey, and then prior to the Atlantic hockey, they were the MAC, and it was a cost containment league. And, it enabled those teams to play at the Division I level, but those teams weren't competing very well at the Division I level. And when RIT and Air Force came in, our programs were at a different level. RIT came in, as from Division III, but they came in fully funded, and we came in. We were pretty loaded for bear at the time. We won the league the first 3 years we were the playoffs. The first 3 years we were in it, and so I do think that we pushed the envelope. RIT, Air Force joining elite. It made everybody up their ante and commitment to hockey. And now you look at Atlantic hockey, and all the programs are fully funded. The facilities, we've got a new facility at RIT. We got a new facility at Bentley, beautiful facility. Same at Sacred Heart. Canisius is playing in the Sabres practice rink, which is very nice. Things are considerably different now than they were 20 years ago. And I think Air Force and RIT had a lot to do with that.
When I think back over all the games I've seen with Air Force, and I think I probably have seen 30 of your 500 wins in person, so many great players you've had over that time. The first one that comes to mind, of course, because he was a Hobie finalist in one of the final three, Eric Ean, but I think of Jacques Lamoureux and like a slew of goaltenders. I mean, there are some terrific players you've been able to bring into the Air Force Academy over those years. How difficult has it been to really get those? I know you mentioned recruiting. How tough is it to get a really terrific player like that who's also willing to become an Air Force officer?
Well, first of all, Ed, those players were good players, but they weren't great players when they came here. They were good players. If they were great players, they would have gone to a more high profile Power 5 type of school. And we don't get great players in here. We get good players that are good citizens, and they're good athletes, and they're good students, and they're team-orientated guys. And we haven't won one championship. We've won 9 championships, but we haven't won one because we've had a team full of great players. We have a team full of good players. Everybody brings something to the table. Some guys will bring, skating ability. Some will bring a physical presence. Some bring a playmaking ability. Some have a scoring touch. And anyway, like you put all those players together, and let's put it this way: it takes a lot of instruments to make up an orchestra. And we've never had a team full of great players, but we've had some great teams. And the great teams we've had is because we've become great collectively. And Jimmy talked about something at the beginning of the broadcast, like how we're starting to hit our stride right now. When you look at all of our championship years, we don't start playing our best hockey until January and February. And Ed, it takes that long to become collectively good, to become connected, to be, where your group of 5 play or your group of 4 play when you're penalty killing. Like I said, we're not great because we're great individually. We become great when we're great collectively. And it takes time. It takes a while to gel. It takes a while for all that to happen. And it generally doesn't really start to happen for us until January.
More with Air Force head coach Frank Serratore in a moment. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Where are my hockey fans at? Present! Welcome to Fandom 101. It's NCAA Ice Hockey Championship time, when the hottest teams in the country face off under one roof. Be there to see your squad hoist the ultimate trophy overhead. The NCAA Men's Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th in St. Paul, Minnesota. Attendance is encouraged. Passion is mandatory. Buy your seats today at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. Class dismissed.
We're back now with Air Force head coach Frank Serratore. No matter what players you have, no matter what year, it always seems that Air Force has a certain personality about it and a certain style of play. If you had to sum that up, how would you describe Air Force's style?
Relentless, tenacious. People say, "Oh, you at a service academy, you guys must be really physical." Well, I think we're more tenacious than we are physical and relentless. And it's not just Air Force. Throw Army in there too. And I've got to tip my hat to Brian Riley and Zach McKelvey and their boys last week. We beat them 8-1 on Friday. We were up 5-0 on Saturday, and they came back and almost beat us on Saturday night. How many teams, I'm asking you guys, how many teams in college hockey or any level of hockey would have got beat 8-1 and been down 5-0 in the second period on Saturday and wouldn't have said, "Hey, screw it, let's pack this in and get ready for next Friday." And Army didn't, and they would never do that. They if they had a pulse, it was so faint, but they came back from the dead and almost stole that game from us. And I really believe that there's only 2 teams in the country that wouldn't have quit fighting with all their might, being up against what they were up against, having been beat 8-1 and been down 5-0. And those 2 teams were in the Tate rink that night.
Right now, you've got looks like 4 players with 20 or more points. Chris Hedden, the sophomore, and some familiar names, Will Gavin, Luke Rowe, Clayton Constantino. Can you talk a little bit about those guys?
Well, for one thing, like, you got to have some of those guys, and you're not going to win championships. You're not going to contend for championships unless you have some of those guys, and we always have. And you go back to the early years. Andrew Volkening, the most important player in Air Force history. Jock Lamoureux. I'm talking to, and I'm going to move on to the year when we upset Michigan for our first NCAA tournament win in 2009. Well, you look back, and that was an upset. It wasn't a fluke. It was an upset, but it wasn't a fluke. They had multiple double-digit NHL draft choices. But we had Andrew Volkaning in goal, who should have been an All-American. It wasn't. We had Greg Flynn on defense, who was an All-American. We had Tim Kirby, who was going to be an All-American in the following years. We had Jacques Lamoureux, who was an All-American on that team. And you've got to have those puzzle pieces. You've got to have people, a goalie that can make the big saves for you when you need it. You got to have players that have the ability to score the big goal. The other thing we have on this team is in Clayton Cosentino is we have the top faceoff man in all of college hockey. Well, I mean, faceoffs, possession is everything, especially now, it's been many years now, but you start out every specialty team situation, power play and penalty kill. Penalty kill, you start out in your zone. Power play, you start out in the offensive zone. If you win the tap, you're in business. If you lose the tap, you're chasing it. And like I said, having Blessing is playing great for us in goal. We've got two defensemen that are scoring and scoring big in our league. Collectively, we're scoring a lot of goals. Our special teams are good, and you have to have those things going for you if you're going to contend for a championship. We were ice cold around Christmas. We went and played in that Milwaukee tournament and played Wisconsin and Duluth, and we lost two heartbreaking games. We went toe to toe with both Duluth, with Wisconsin and Duluth. And I was proud of our guys. We made those teams play their best hockey to beat us. And we went toe-to-toe to them with chances and special teams and everything. And they ended up being able to scratch out a couple goals, and we didn't. But I told our guys when we went to Bentley, guys, I don't coach the scoreboard. I never have. I mean, right now, we're getting chances. We're getting great goaltending. Our special teams are very good. It's just a matter of time before the pucks are going to start going in the net. And then we went to Bentley, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, the hockey gods started. We started to get some breaks from the hockey gods, and the puck started going into the net. But with this team we have right now, like I said earlier, this is a good Air Force team, and we've got to keep it going. And the competition is stiffer than it's ever been. There are no nights off. There used to be a night off. You catch somebody on a low cycle. Nobody's on a low cycle. And we got to keep going. We got to keep winning with consistency. But this team does have the puzzle pieces that it needs to contend for a championship.
Frank, I look at the remainder of your schedule, and you will have a 2-game series at home against Canisius this weekend. And I know coaches don't like to look too far forward, but I look at the teams that surround you in the standings. Sacred Heart's in there, Holy Cross is in there, RIT's in there. Well, that's the next 6 games that you play after Canisius. Then you close with Robert Morris. As a good friend of mine and mentor, Jerry York, always said, this is men's league. This is where it's real. And since January 1, it's been all Atlantic hockey for you. How do you kind of assess this schedule that you have left, and how do you really break it down? Is it just, I know coaches love to say game by game, period by period, but I think you have to be thinking about, where do the points come from? Where do you find them? How do you approach that finish, this home stretch?
Well, first of all, Jim, that's a good question. And I think that this time of year, all the contenders, and there are a lot of contenders out in college hockey right now because everybody's so deep and everybody's so old, and everybody for the most part is on a pretty good cycle. But this time of year with the real contenders, generally, if you're the real deal and you're playing somebody else that's the real deal, the even strength play is going to kind of cancel itself out. If you can't play even strength, you're not long for this world. So it gets down to special teams and goaltending. And our special teams have been very good. They need to continue to be very good. Our goaltending, Guy Blessing, is making. Not only is he giving us great goaltending, but he's making big saves at the right time. Sometimes it's not the amount of saves; it's the timing of the saves. We started that game out on Saturday against West Point, and they had 2 breakaways in the first 6 minutes, and he saves them, and it enabled us to get some traction and get our footing under us, and so I think a lot of it gets down to special teams and goaltending. I always say, goaltending is 50% of the game. And unless, of course, it's bad goaltending, then it's 100% of the game. So this time of the year, your special teams better be clicking and your goaltender better be hot.
Well, we will watch with a lot of anticipation as your Air Force team moves down the stretch here in Atlantic hockey. It's been a fun season to watch from afar. And of course, congratulations yet again on the 500 career victories. Frank Serratore, we appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Jimmy. Ed, have a good day.
That's Air Force head coach Frank Serratore. Jim, it's great to catch up with Frank Serratore. And we've known him for many years and seen his program make some amazing runs to the NCAA tournament. But as we talk to him, it's also an indication on how the game has changed. And I know this has been a theme throughout the year that we're in a golden age. But what I think is really impressive is that Air Force and their service academy partner, Army, that they've been able to recruit and compete in this era of transfers and fifth-year players that they haven't been able to participate in.
I give them all the respect in the world. I don't know how they do it. You're talking about, recruiting players, that have to sign up to take their opportunity to play 4 years of college hockey, learn in school, get a diploma, get a degree from a military academy, but then get 4 years of service back to the country. That alone is difficult enough. Then, as everybody's adding players, you can't add anybody in terms of transfers unless these players want to basically start over again as freshmen. Instead, you're probably losing some players that say, hey, maybe this military thing's not for me. I'm going to maybe back out of my commitment. I'll pay back what I have to, but I want to transfer. I want to get out of here. That is really difficult as a situation. We've heard other coaches talk about it. Some of the places that don't have grad schools, you have to go for a minimum of 2 years to transfer. But this one really, I think, hits deeper. It's real hard, I think, to continue to recruit. And that's what I think makes the longevity of obviously it's the Riley family at Army West Point. But Frank Serratore, I was trying to figure out how many years has he been at Air Force. I looked it up and said 1997. Wow, that seems like a really long time. But very impressive what he has done. His longevity now in 27 seasons there, in Colorado Springs. That program and him and now is absolutely 100% synonymous. He's done a great job building and always being competitive. That's another part of it. It's not just building, but consummately every year after year, being competitive.
He described the style as relentless, and I'd have to agree. And I also agree with him that his teams have the tendency of getting better and better and really hitting their stride in January and February, where it probably matters most. In the final 6 weeks of play, they've got to take on 3 of the top 5 teams in Atlantic hockey and then wrap up the season at home with Robert Morris. They're right in the thick of it now, and they could sneak in, and it really wouldn't be sneaking. They could be right up there, even battling for first place in the regular season where they stand right now.
That's legitimate. And then what they really want to battle for is make sure that they're not traveling. Get your first round bye and then host your second round game. I understand they're the Air Force Academy and they can travel on private planes and make life a little bit easier than the average team. You still don't want to be going. You'd rather be bringing teams into the altitude of Colorado Springs and making them play difficult games out there, as opposed to heading east somewhere and trying to battle on the road. So I think the home ice advantage there is really legitimate, more so than maybe some other schools. And they're also putting themselves in a really good position to win. And again, also building confidence. When you think about the fact that they're 5-1 since January 1, and now they have 10 league games left. Say they go 8-2 in that could be 13-3 after the break or after the calendar turns. What a way to close the season that could be.
Well, we do congratulate Frank Serratore on his 500th win. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at Xcel Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. Visit ncaa.com/mfrozen4 to get your tickets today. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been USCHO Spotlight.